Hello. Hello. No, 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 no. Hello, sir.
Yes.
The line is breaking. I think it's my network. Okay, can you hear me? Can't hear jack shit. I can barely hear anything.
Hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
All right, are we good to go?
Yes,
we are.
So I can proceed.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're keeping safe and staying at home. You're welcome to the third and last day of our SP COVID-19 webinar series. My name is Ifeoma Solanke. I'm an associate in Strachan Partners, a member of the dispute resolution team as well. Today, we shall be discussing the legal steps and safeguards against pandemics going forward, with specific reference to the role of insurance as a mitigating factor. We shall be taking a different approach today. It's going to be an interactive session. As in the next 30 minutes, I shall be asking some questions to our very own Onyebuchi, who by way of introduction is the managing associate, the head of litigation team of Strachan Partners, and an expert in dispute resolution as well as insurance disputes. Very welcome.
Thank you.
Before we proceed, I'd like for us to have a recap of what we've been learning since. In our earlier series, we discussed the effect of the COVID-19 on business models. We looked at contracts, we considered the doctrine of force majeure, we looked at frustration, we also looked at contract of employment, as well as data privacy and breach. We did not do our series without looking at the effect of the COVID-19 on the access to justice. Today, like I have mentioned, we'll be looking at that area where we see how we can mitigate the effects of the losses on businesses, individuals, and the country at large. If you're just joining us, you're welcome. Please be kind to drop your questions and we'll get right to it. As we know, it's no longer news that on the 30th of January 2020, the World Health Organization described COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international health concern. It also went further to declare COVID-19 a pandemic of international health concern. Because of the cross-border have been affected locally and internationally. A lot of countries and their governments, like the governments of the UK, US, France, and Italy, have been forced to take drastic steps in line with the directions of the World Health Organization towards curbing the spread of the COVID-19. Some of the steps that have been taken by the government include closure of their borders, restriction of domestic and international flights, implementation of the stay-at-home policy, and social distancing, which has necessitated businesses having their employees work from home, just like we're doing at Strachan Partners. Nigeria is not left alone, as the federal government of Nigeria has declared a lockdown of Lagos, Ogun State, and FCT for an initial 14 days, which was very recently extended for another 14 days. The steps that have been taken by governments will in no little measures affect businesses, as there will be business interruption, which would be manifested by contracts being breached, frustrated, and the doctrine of force majeure being invoked in some cases. This effect to see a huge financial loss to businesses, individuals, and the nation at large. Having said that, Mr. Aaron, can you give us an insight as to where Nigeria stands with this pandemic? What happens to Nigeria and other countries? Do they have any form of relief from the funds that they are spending? Are they insured in any way?
Thank you very much, Ifeoma, and good morning, everyone. So what you see now is that countries are initiating social policies to cushion the effects of the pandemic on its citizens. But one thing we tend to forget is that, in a way, countries are also like businesses. That is, as businesses are trying to make profits, countries also have economies that they would like to see continue to strive. And the unique thing about nations' economies is that there is an imbalance of power. Some nations' economies are stronger than others. So while some countries' economies may be hard hit, the effect will be more difficult for some countries than others. So when events like this happen and there is some form of negative impact on the economy, it is important for countries like Nigeria to begin to think about its options and look at its legal options. Now, over the past few weeks, we've seen some contributions from individuals and corporate entities being made to the federal government. But what is more relevant to our discussion is the legal mechanism that the government of Nigeria and indeed other countries can leverage upon at a time like this. And one of those mechanisms is what is called the Pandemic Emergency Financing Facility. Now, this facility was established by the World Health Organization in collaboration with the World Bank. And the utility of this facility really is to provide some form of additional sources of income or additional sources of financing to help the world's poorest countries respond to cross-border and large-scale spread of viruses and pandemic like what we are experiencing with COVID-19, but also what Ebola can do, SARS, Lassa fever, etc. So the point is that countries can rely on this facility to offload portions of this pandemic risk and its response that are beyond its immediate budgetary capacity. So for instance, when Democratic Republic of Congo was suffering in 2019, I think about July, they relied on this facility, this pandemic emergency financing facility, and obtained a payoff of about $180 million to aid its Ebola response. So how does it work? Now, when pandemics like this happen, it's often the case that there would have already been a predetermined set of thresholds that should be met. So in the sense that what is the number of deaths, what is the number of infections within a given time frame. So when all these thresholds are put together, countries that meet the threshold can then apply to the World Bank and the World Health Organization to get some form of payouts to assist its economy and assist its response to the pandemic. So in this instance, a country like Nigeria and other poorer countries can actually make applications to the World Bank and the World Health Organization, rely on this facility to assist them in times like this.
Thank you very much. What about businesses and individuals? I mean, if countries can get reliefs, can businesses get reliefs as well? What options are open to them?
Okay, well, like you said during your introduction, the World Health Organization has declared this pandemic one of international health concern. So for individuals who have, during this period, developed some form of health issues, they can make recourse to their health insurance policies, that if they have one. And in extreme cases where life is unfortunately lost, those individuals who have life insurance can also make claims to their insurance company. But it's important for me to point out at this junction that certain policies, certain insurance policies have their limits, right? So for example, your insurance policy might have a monetary limit. That is, your insurer can cover you only to a specific amount, and anything above that would be your liability. So it's important for you to look at your insurance language and see the extent of cover that you enjoy. Now, your insurance might also be one that is of the nature that it only covers some types of sicknesses. So for instance, your insurance may cover your medical emergency like accidents, might also cover you for a medical procedure, that's an operation, or ailments like malaria, typhoid, etc. But it may not cover you for viral diseases like HIV, Ebola, COVID-19. So it's important for individuals at this time to study their insurance policy, understand the nature and content and extent of cover that you enjoy under your policy. Now, having said that, I understand that pandemics are very, very rare, right? And these are typically not covered. So there's a very high chance that a lot of people would not enjoy any form of cover for this pandemic or for any health issues arising out of it. But like I said, it's important for you to study your policy, see the language, and see what you can enjoy under it. But for businesses, it's safe to assume that certain businesses will currently be incurring losses as a result of this lockdown and restriction of movement. The claims that these businesses can make would largely depend on the type of cover that they enjoy or that they have put in place before this outbreak. So individuals who have health insurance can leverage on their health insurance and make claims. Businesses also that have anticipated this type of risk can also rely on their policies and get some form of relief for their losses.
Yes, definitely. Businesses will be looking to make insurance claims at this time. So can you tell us what types of covers that businesses can take out for times like this? I mean, COVID-19 times precisely.
I think the most important insurance at a time like this is what is called the business interruption insurance. And the business interruption insurance is one that a company will typically put in place to cover income losses in an event that its business is halted for reasons beyond its control. So it could be that your business has been interrupted as a result of a fire or as a result of a health disaster, a natural disaster, sorry. So it covers like the business interruption insurance would help a particular business to cover its operating expenses and line items like staff payments, taxes, and even loan repayments. So as we've said in the past couple of days, and I think Ifeoma, you also even mentioned it during the course of your introduction, that a number of businesses have been interrupted due to the imposition of lockdowns and restrictions by the federal government. Now, naturally, these interruptions would lead to losses to their business. So it's imperative that companies should have already anticipated this risk and secured insurance policies against it. Because if you are not insured against a particular risk, you cannot make any claims arising from losses due to that risk. So what's significant about insurance is that it's protection against anticipated risk. If you've not anticipated the risk, it's unlikely that you would have been insured against it. So, for instance, let me give an example. If you are operating a business from Nigeria, it's likely that you would prioritize an insurance policy that would cover you in the event of fire over an insurance policy that would cover you in the event of a natural disaster like earthquake. Because if you are doing business in Nigeria, it would be reasonable for you to anticipate a fire, or it would be a bit far-fetched for you to anticipate an earthquake. So if you apply this logic, it's likely that companies would have underestimated the occurrence of a pandemic like COVID-19 and how disruptive that it can be to their businesses. So if you ask me if I'm to hazard a guess and make some form of speculation, I would say that a lot of businesses might not get reliefs in times like this because they had not anticipated the risk. Having said that, I'm not trying to say that some businesses or that my speculation applies to all businesses or all companies. There are definitely a number of companies that would have anticipated this risk and obtained adequate and extensive protection. For instance, Wimbledon in the past 17 years has been paying premium to protect it against interruption due to a pandemic. So now in 2018, in 2020, now that the tournament has been cancelled, its underwriters will now have to pay it to mitigate its losses to the point of $141 million. Now that's a lot of money. So this is the type of risk that Wimbledon has anticipated. And in fact, Wimbledon's insurance cover for business interruption is so extensive that it covers interruption as a result of a terrorist attack. It covers interruption for a period of national mourning for the Queen. So this underscores the necessity of companies to start to think about far-reaching insurance covers, far-reaching risks that they may suffer during the course of their business. So it's important for companies to begin to think about more comprehensive cover to protect it against any form of business interruption. Now, having said that, I'm also mindful of the fact that a lot of insurance companies might not be willing to provide covers for pandemics or business interruption due to certain rare events. And this is understandable because you need to, as an insurance company, you need to have sufficient data to rely on for you to go into your business. You need to be able to fully anticipate your losses, or you need to be able to fully anticipate your exposure if a risk occurs. So due to insufficient data for things like pandemics, insurance companies may be unwilling to provide this type of covers. However, I think that it presents a unique opportunity for insurance companies to see this as an opportunity to expand the extent of policies they offer and thereby increase its income that they can make over time.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Having heard what you said, does it mean that businesses that haven't been fortunate or smart enough to put in these insurance covers would be at their own peril at this time?
No, not necessarily. So some businesses, despite not being expressly covered for the COVID-19 pandemic, may still bring claims depending on the language of the insurance policy. Now, an insurance policy is a contract between the insured and the insurer. And for every contract, language is very important. So at a time like this, it's important for companies to make recourse to their existing policies and remind themselves of the extent of cover that they enjoy. Now, your cover might be one that has an extended policy, in which case you can extend it to a situation like this and get some form of claims. Your policy might also be one that covers that even if you are not protected against a pandemic, you are protected or you are covered as for losses as a result of directives from the government. So while you may not have an insurance policy for a pandemic, you can say that the government restriction and the lockdown has affected your business, you've incurred a loss, and as a result, you can make a claim to the insurance company. But the learning points, like I said earlier, the learning point is for companies to begin to look ahead, to proactively evaluate the adequacy of their current insurance coverage, and also anticipate any and all forms of business interruption so that they can get adequate coverage for any losses they may incur.
Well, there you have it, people. Just to emphasize the points that Aaron has made, it's important for businesses to look to their insurance covers, to review their policies at this time. It's very key for you to do that with insurance lawyers so that you're sure that you are substantially covered to be able to get these claims. Now, Mr. Aaron, assuming you qualify to claim under a pandemic, maybe like COVID-19. Perhaps you were lucky to insure yourself against pandemics like COVID-19, or you, based on your extended policy, qualify to claim under COVID-19. What about instances when you haven't paid your premium or you paid it in part? Will you still qualify to claim under the policy?
Well, this is a very interesting point because oftentimes you will see companies that have taken out insurance policies but have not paid the insurance premium. So you've taken out a policy, you have an executed insurance contract. You are required under your contract to make a payment for the premium. But you see a lot of companies would not pay the premium as at when due. Now, it's a fundamental point in Nigeria, under Nigerian law, that payment of insurance premium confers validity to your insurance contract. That is, if you've not paid your insurance premium, you will not be entitled to rely on your insurance contract. So it's very important that once you take out an insurance policy, you should proceed immediately to pay the premium. Because if you do not pay the premium and the risk that you have been insured against occurs, your insurance company will be entitled to repudiate liability, because under Nigerian law, like I said, no premium, no cover. So if you've not paid your insurance premium, you would not be entitled under the law to make any claim at a time like this.
Well, thank you very much for the premium as a business. What steps do you
Sorry, Ifeoma, I can't hear you anymore.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, I said, haven't paid your premium as a business. What steps do you take when your business has incurred some losses as a result of COVID-19?
Okay, so you have a scenario where you've taken out an insurance policy, you've executed the contract, you've made your payments, and the risk that you have been insured against occurs. The very first step, I like to always emphasize that you can never consult your lawyer too much. So the very first step I would recommend is for you to consult your lawyer to assist you in studying your insurance policy, to see the extent of cover that you enjoy and the amount of claim that you can bring. So when you make that determination, it's also important that you know that it's a contract. So a contract has implied terms. There are warranties that are associated with contracts. So it's also important that you would have met those warranties and complied with the implied and express terms of the insurance contract. Another point is for you to understand that there may be a requirement for you to bring your claim in a prompt and timely manner. So some insurance companies may require you to inform them of your loss within a particular period of time. It could be 7 days, it could be 30 days, it could be 60 days. So if you suffer a loss at a time like this, it's very important for you to look at your insurance contract, see whether there is a time limit for you to bring your claim. Now, in the situation that we are in, where businesses are still locked down, it might be difficult for businesses to have completely evaluated the losses that they are suffering at the moment. So we are still in this situation. So it makes sense if no business is making any claims now. But it's important for you to know that at the end of the lockdown, when situations get back to normal as soon as they can, you should look at your contract and see whether there is a time limit for you to bring your claim. So pay your premium, comply with all the conditions, precedents, and warranties required by your contract, and try to bring your claims within a prompt and timely manner.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for helping us with those steps. Seeing that in this COVID-19 crisis period, a lot of persons or businesses would incur huge losses. Do you have any recommendations for businesses to mitigate these losses going forward?
Okay, like I earlier indicated during the course of my analysis, one of the reasons why companies may not enjoy any form of relief in a time like this is that they have not been able to adequately anticipate this risk. And this is because pandemics are very rare. And there is the temptation, even now that we are in this situation, there is still that temptation for you to assume that it will not happen again anytime soon. However, with the advancement of technology, companies can now rely on some form of computer simulation models to be able to assess the likelihood of an outbreak, assess the extent of its spread, the economic impact that it would have on its business. And relying on these projections, companies can then take out insurance policies. So my recommendation is for businesses to be proactive enough to check or to inculcate some of these predictions into their business plan and take out adequate insurance covers. Also, as a prospective insurance holder, I would also recommend that you should consult an insurance lawyer to help you review whatever insurance policy you are trying to take out, to ensure that likely risks which may affect your business are adequately and substantially covered. And just before I round off, let me also say that the job of the regulatory agency is very, very important in a time like this. So I would recommend that the National Insurance Commission, that's the regulatory agency that regulates insurance business in Nigeria, to issue a directive or some form of guideline to enable insurance companies be able to properly assess their exposure and put a price to pandemic risks so that businesses can begin to take out some form of cover. And lastly, my recommendation, and I think I mentioned it earlier during the course of this presentation, I would recommend to insurance companies to see this as a business opportunity to expand. Like I said, insurance companies may not be eager to provide covers for pandemics because they cannot assess their exposure. But it's important for them to understand that this might be a unique opportunity for you to expand and develop new lines of business, thereby opening up more income and more revenue for your company.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron, for the insightful response to our questions. I'm sure a lot of us have learned from it and been impacted. Before the webinar series, we had questionnaires and had people send in their questions prior to the webinar series. We'll be taking some of these questions. I hope you don't mind availing us with some answers.
Of course, sure.
So the first question we have here is there any legal measure that can be deployed to cushion some of the effects of the pandemic on MSMEs?
Well, I think we can agree that for every economy, the MSMEs are very, very vital for its growth. So a lot of them would be looking at how they can cushion the effects of their losses at a time like this. But unfortunately, MSMEs might not have the financial capacity to take out extensive covers, right? Unfortunately, so that's really the point. If you don't have an insurance cover, you would not be able to make some form of claims to any insurance company. Having said that, perhaps I should just add that in a time like this, governments like Nigeria are initiating some form of social intervention policies to assist small businesses to survive in a time like this. So you might want to consult your lawyer, you might want to do some form of research to see the type of social intervention policies that is being initiated and see whether you are qualified to benefit from these policies.
Thank you very much for that. We have another question here. It's a long one. Contracts that are being executed with parties having made commitments and performance is in progress, but has been stalled by this pandemic, particularly for perishable or contract with timelines. How will the loss be mitigated by the parties, considering that none of them are at fault? Okay, so if we understand this question, I'm sure the person that has sent it would like to know what happens when during the course of performing your contract, the pandemic strikes and the contract in question is for perishables or contracts with timelines. Can I take this question?
Sure, please go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, parties in this kind of situation should make recourse to the terms of their contracts to, like we said on the first day, see if there's a force majeure clause, or if there isn't, to there'll be a recourse to the doctrine of frustration, as the contract has been frustrated by the pandemic. If none of this is in place, or even if all of these are in place, parties will be able to mitigate their losses if they have taken out insurance covers. So what you do is to inform your insurer and try as much as possible to put your documents together to be able to make your insurance claims. Other than this, I don't think there's any much you can do than resorting to your contracts and resorting to the other party to put them on notice of your inadequacies, and then looking at your insurance cover. So we'll take the next question. What are the implications and solutions for businesses that could not pay back loan, which repayment plan runs into the unprecedented economic drag period caused by COVID-19? Aaron, can you help us with this, please?
The short answer to that is, the implication is that you would likely default in your repayment plan. It's a possibility, it's a great possibility in a time like this. The solution is for you to reach out to your creditor and try to work out a resolution. It could be by way of restructuring your loan. It could be by way of suspending repayment in the time being. It might also even be by way of suspending accumulation of interest. Whatever is the case, whatever solution you might want to get into, what is most important is that it's mutually agreed between you and your creditor, because you cannot unilaterally impose or adjust a contract that has already been executed. So I would recommend that if you are likely going to suffer, or if you are likely going to default on repayment of a loan that you had already taken out, you should reach out to your creditor and adopt a mutually beneficial solution. Yeah.
I think there's a question here from the chat session. There's one question. In addition to insurance, would you recommend a swift intervention by the legislature to swiftly pass or amend laws to mitigate the impact of the pandemic by suspending obligation to file for insolvency, protection of tenants against eviction, and deferring payment or repayment of loans for a defined period? Do you recommend swift intervention by the legislature?
Well, I would not say that. I mean, at the end of the day, the legislature has extensive powers to make laws, but there is, no matter how extensive your powers are, there is a limit to it. So I doubt that the legislature can make a law to stop a landlord, for instance, from demanding rents from his tenants. However, I think legislation can assist in terms of suspending certain obligations in a time like this. So yes, you can make legislation to suspend the obligation to file for insolvency if your insolvency is tied to the losses you are accumulating during this period. But of course, you can't make a law to, like I said, stop a landlord, for instance, from demanding rent. It's still the landlord's right in a time like this to get some form of profit from his property. So you really cannot interfere with that right. You can't ask the landlord to evict, but what you can do is that you can make laws that impact on general rights as against specific rights between two contracting parties.
All right, thank you very much, Aaron. I hope that answers the question. There's one more question here, and I think after that we'll be rounding off. Executed contracts with insurance cover, but not comprehensive enough to cover the loss. What can the parties do? Okay, so there's another question. So I'll take this, and Aaron, we'll see if you can take the other question so that we round off. I think I lost the question. Okay, executed contracts with insurance cover, but not comprehensive enough to cover the loss. What can the parties do? Well, just like we mentioned, some companies or some businesses would not be able to claim under their covers because they haven't been able to cover substantially for pandemics. So you can't insure for a storm during a flood. In that case, you can't start now to insure for pandemics when there's a pandemic. So companies without comprehensive insurance policies, if they do not qualify under their extended policy, it's not likely that there will be any mitigation for their losses under insurance, as it were. So Aaron, would you like to take the other question?
Okay, which of the questions? Questions that I see, the question I see here is, what's your take on international contracts that cannot be fulfilled at this time? I think this was the subject of discussion on the first day of the webinar series. So if your contract is one that has a force majeure clause, you need to start by complying with the steps like issuing a notice to the other contracting party, and you can rely on the force majeure clause. If your contract does not have a force majeure clause, you can rely on the doctrine of frustration. This was the subject of extensive conversations on the first day. So if you have an insurance contract that cannot be fulfilled at a time like this, look at your contract. Does it have a force majeure clause? You need to issue a notice and notify the other party. If it does not have a force majeure clause, you might also rely on the doctrine of frustration and avoid some form of liability. But the interesting thing is that if you are relying on the doctrine of frustration, it does not essentially lead to the termination of the contract. I think Ajoke emphasized the point. When you rely on frustration, the end point might be for you to suspend immediate compliance or performance of the contract. It might be to terminate the contract. It all depends on it's a case-by-case basis. So it all depends on the nature of services you are providing under the contract.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there are more questions. I don't know if you have time to take one more. Do you mind taking one?
Let me just take this last one. Do you think employers should consider their draft contract of employment by including force majeure clauses? I think this specific question was also asked yesterday, and Jerome recommended that. It's a contract. An employment contract is a contract. So you can include anything that is convenient for both parties. So yes, I think that employers should consider including force majeure clauses. But indeed, the force majeure clause could protect both the employer and the employee. In a time like this, when businesses are suffering, you might not be able to pay salaries. And unfortunately, you might need to lay off some staff. And you may end up relying on the force majeure clause to do that. So yes, indeed, my answer is that employers should definitely consider including force majeure clauses in their contract. Having said that, I think that is the extent of questions we can take. We may not be able to take all the questions. So I'll just encourage everyone that has questions that have been unanswered. So please you can send your questions to the email address. If you can please share the email address on the screen. You can send your questions and we'll get someone to respond to them. Or you can go to our website to get the email addresses. Having said that,
so our email addresses are there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ifeoma. Having said that, we've come to the end of the Strachan Partners COVID-19 webinar series. And the reason why we had this series is for us to be able to impact knowledge in respect of issues that have come up during this period. And we hope that for the past 3 days, you've had an informative and educating session. Having said that, to completely round off the series, I would like to introduce or invite the senior partner of Strachan Partners, Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson, SAN, to make some comments if he has any.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, well, thanks very much. The first thing I should do is to thank those of you who put this on the last 3 days. When you decided to do this, I knew that it would be valuable not just for a number of other people, but for myself as well. I, having listened to the 3 days, have enjoyed it tremendously. Extremely impressive. And it's very important that we have this opportunity to share. You know, many of the things that we talked about are things that lawyers don't have the opportunity necessarily to study in detail. And it's helpful to have this discussion because we have things to share, not just on this topic, but a variety of topics in which our own business has taken us to. And I know that as we go forward, there'll be opportunities for others who are participating right now virtually to also assist us and assist the legal platform across Nigeria in getting out information and valuable experience. It's very important to share. And an important thing I thought that was important for me to talk about is that even in a crisis like this is a crisis like we've never seen before. Life must go on. The one that we have now is existential, and an existential crisis, like many natural calamities in the history of man, accelerates history. Things that would have developed over the next 10, 15 to 20 years will develop in the next 3 to 6 months. And we're going to a place we have never seen before. Yeah. We have to be prepared. Some people will be wringing their hands. Some people will be wondering what is going to happen. Some people will be idling their time away, but we're spending our time useful. Two things that are important in a calamity, apart from being calm, is that the human spirit and human ingenuity are the most important resources that human beings have. And a platform like this is sharing that ingenuity and testing that ingenuity. We're not only imparting our own knowledge, but we're trying to generate ideas that will be valuable. The experiences and information that other people have, we'd like to be sure that it's shared across the board. And this is why I said earlier on that if anybody else wants to participate in this sort of program, that they should let us know. We're happy to share the information that we're sharing, and we're happy to have information shared by other people. And this takes me to asking, what do people want to know? I know that a platform has been open so people can talk and exchange ideas and send emails. If there's something in particular you'd like to have discussed, if there's some area of law that you think you can find benefit in asking other people about, this is a useful platform to do so. For myself, I find that what would be interesting for me going forward is the impact of technology, blockchain for lawyers. I'm reading an article right now from Harvard University called Educating the Digital Lawyer. I'm not too old to learn, and I think that everybody on this platform should be able to learn. Yesterday, I was listening to a webinar by Varium Law Chambers in London about the first virtual hearing conducted by the Commercial Court in England, a case between the Bank of Kazakhstan and the Bank of New York Mellon, $513 million. Very important case, very high powered team of lawyers, and they deployed across a digital platform. And those lessons are powerful and manifest. One that's very important for me is that even if you're at home, you should dress like as if you're at an office. That's why you see me in a shirt and a tie rather than in my swimming trunks. So it's important to recognize that as time changes and as we start to present and deploy ourselves on digital platforms, we must remember to keep the formality and the rules by which we operate. Some of the things I think will be useful going forward is a lesson on advocacy, ethics, professional responsibility. These are things we need to discuss. Civics, how government works, the social contract, because right now the fabric of our government is being tested. In many respects, its competence, its skill, and its obligation to impart trust to the people. So these are many important things. There's a wide variety of things that we can discuss. And we don't have to be in the same room. We don't have to infect each other. I hope that this pandemic will come to an end quickly. But the lessons we learn now are going to be valuable going forward. So thank you again for participating, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you as time goes on. That's me.
All right, thank you very much, sir. And once again, thank you, everyone. We'll see you at some other engagements. Bye.